Greetings, everyone in the Cheese Room. Welcome to the show from the American headquarters of the Cheese Room. My name is Jack H., and I'm thrilled to be with all of you. Joining me to discuss the debut of Ange Ball, we have a world-class panel, including insights straight from the Community Stadium in West London. But first, I want to introduce the Cheese Room's chief stats analyst and my son, Isaiah. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. And then also joining us after being away far too long, Becky, how you doing?
Very good, thank you, Jack. Hello, everybody. Nice to be back. Well rested and ready to talk about the coming season.
You had a good summer?
Yeah, but the weather hasn't exactly been brilliant, but I've enjoyed the rest.
All right, good. We also have Stuart from Bristol. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, all good. It was a good first glimpse of Ange Ball in the Premier League, so looking forward to talking about it.
All right, and last but certainly not least, we have the man, the legend, Steve Dyer, fresh off his appearance for being on the Cheese Room Pod with Muir and Franco. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. It's been a busy start of the week, busy weekend, but yeah, like Becky said, good to be back. Optimistic. Here we go.
All right. Well, I'll tell you, we're doing a regular match review, so as we usually would, what are we going to talk about first? Let's talk about our lineup. So we had 4 new debutantes, which I think I was told was the most we've had in almost 2 decades. First, Becky, I want to ask your thoughts on the lineup when you saw that come out. What were you thinking, and what surprised you the most, if anything?
I was pretty sure that I kind of thought that's the way it would be. The only one for me was whether it be Porro or Royal. But I think personally Royal is the better defender than Porro. So having like a flat back 4 from last season's back 5, I was quite pleased. It was great to see Van der Ven straight in. I know we'd signed him before all the Kane saga, but I felt that maybe it might be a match too early for him. So that was brilliant to see him straight in. I was hoping Udogie would play. He'd played a fair bit in pre-season, so that was great. Again, whether it been Skip or Sarr, there's kind of arguments for both. But being at the Shakhtar game last week, I thought possibly it would be Skip. And then, the front 3 of Kulusevski, Richarlison and Son. Richarlison's got to step up. I'm sure we'll come to that later on. But I thought the front 3 was as expected as well. Great to see Basuma and Maddison in midfield, and brilliant to see them just kind of step up so brilliantly yesterday as well. But yeah, as a lineup, for me, the biggest thing was Dyer not in the squad at all. So that for me was more the subs, really.
That one was notable pretty clearly. It's hard to imagine someone not being in the squad jumping out at you, but that one jumped out at me. Steve,
yeah, you
were there at the ground as well. What was the reaction of the people around you?
Well, I was in with the home fans, so they probably didn't care too much about our lineup.
That's true.
But I think my reaction similar to Becky. The only thing that surprised me is Udogie and Van der Ven on the left of defence. 2 new players, haven't played in the team much, haven't played in the Premier League at all. I thought that was a bit risky, but then I'm not Ange, am I? And it obviously worked out. Now probably our 2 best defenders in the day. That was the only surprise to me. And
Stuart, did you expect anything different or were this also what you were kind of expecting to see it on the pitch?
No, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised that he. I was sort of a little bit apprehensive that we might start Davies or Sanchez in the left centre back position, but that just shows the difference that Ange is as a coach, where he's got confidence in players that he's brought in, and he's only had I don't think he's even had a week's worth of training, and never played in the Premier League before or anything like the same as Udogie and stuff. I was really sort of happy that Ange is sort of that kind of coach where he's happy to take that risk. Where if that was Conte, we wouldn't probably see Van der Ven for months because he's got to get up to whatever Conte's level was in his head. So that was good.
Learn the system, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I was also hoping to see Lo Celso, but I think we just wanted a little bit more of a sort of defensive-minded midfield rather than really attacking. So Skip's that sort of guy at the moment, I think, because he's obviously older than Sarr, and Højbjerg's on the way out, I think. So yeah, most of it made sense.
And Isaiah, you're a big fan of Højbjerg, as we know, as we both are. Was there anything that you were disappointed about in terms of this lineup, or anything that you thought was particularly noteworthy?
Well, I thought that maybe Højbjerg would start if they didn't go with Lo Celso or Sarr in the other 8, because I just thought if they were going to go with a slightly more defensive option for the midfield 3, it would be Højbjerg. But it certainly didn't surprise me to see that it was Skip. He's definitely more mobile, and so for having an impact in the penalty area and being able to get back in transition, I can understand using him in that box-to-box role over Højbjerg, who obviously has less mobility, just not as quick. And yeah, the main surprise for me was definitely Van de Ven. I did not think he would start. I was really surprised to see a guy who hasn't had so much as a preseason substitution appearance for us, only been around the squad a couple of days. I was surprised to see Ange just kind of chuck him into the lineup, but he certainly did well. So
I was shocked. I mean, I got to tell you guys, I thought it was Davies was going to be there just because, not because you want him, but because you wouldn't throw a brand new player into the mix who hasn't trained at all. And I was astounded. That's the only thing that jumped out at me, obviously, except for the Dyer being omitted. But I really thought that was the one that shocked me. And clearly, as we'll talk about, I don't think that was the wrong decision. So I really like to see the courage from a manager to throw someone in that clearly he identified that he wanted. And we've got a comment I want to throw up real quick. According to Jeff Eves, it's Udogi, which I think is what I saw that from an interview he had too, pronounced it for somebody. I don't remember who that was, but I think that's correct. So I'll try to correct myself on that going forward. So let's talk about it real quick. I mean, Dyer, we've made a lot about this lineup. I mean, this lineup is completely different than what we've seen in the past. I mean, the turnover we've seen, it might be the final rebuild that we've been talking about for 5 years really taking shape, and Dyer not even being in the squad at all. I think most people have seen the comments from Ange in the post-game presser where he just kind of made the statement is he's still in the squad or something to that effect. He's still a member of the squad, I think is what it said. Yeah, Steve, what are your thoughts? Do you think this is the end of the line for Dyer? Is he on his way out, or is he just going to become someone that stays at the club and just doesn't play?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping it is. He's been a good servant. I like him. He's clearly committed. Everything I read, everything I hear, he's one of the first in for training, one of the last to leave. He doesn't complain, but he's just not of the quality, in particular pace. And who I was sat next to watching a game, we were chatting, and there was a couple of chances, particularly in the second half, where Van de Ven covered, and he just thought, like, there's no way Dyer would have got back for that. I think if Dyer had played yesterday, we would have lost.
Yeah.
Brentford, particularly in the second half, would have hit us on the counter a couple of times, and we just wouldn't have got back. Particularly if we would have had Davis as well, who's not quickest. So I think having those two out of the team is of a benefit. Although I'd still keep Davis, to be clear.
Yeah, I think Ben he fills too many roles. I think he's more flexible, and you can position him differently and play different formations with him than you can with Dyer. Anyone else? I mean, does anyone think Dyer should stay at the club, or do you think he should move on for his own sake?
It's one of those. It's one of those things about. We've said this about Sanchez before. If we think back to the North London derby in May 22, when Romero was out almost last minute, Sanchez stepped in and then played for the rest of that season. And he is quicker. You said that he is quicker than Dyer. I think it just also sort of intimates this idea that Ange is coming in and there are going to be wholesale changes. Kane's obviously gone. Dyer's very friendly with Kane. Højbjerg. He's not prepared. He's not afraid to make big decisions, and he's not really bothered about who likes it or not. And I think that's really brave, and that's where the respect has come really quickly for Postecoglou, because he's prepared to make those decisions. The whole kind of whether Dyer did unfollow or didn't follow and unfollow and refollow and all that business, whether it did, I still think, and anyone who follows me on Twitter will notice that I think the timing of the picture on Friday of him wearing a captain's armband was not accidental.
No,
that kind of came up and sort of flared in his face, and whether it was people of his team who did it, well, if it's people of his team, then he needs to sack his team, because people know how close to Kane he is. And I think, it sort of stuck 2 fingers up at Sonny as well, and it's all just a bit odd. So, Dyer's not the worst player, but I agree with you with Davis. Davis is left-footed, and if we're going to talk about Longley and that sort of idea, he's a squad player, Davis, but he's left-footed. So that becomes, we saw yesterday with Romero's injury. Once we have injuries, things start unraveling quite quickly. But Davis could play left back, he could play left centre back, and I think Sanchez has shown that he can be a little bit more versatile. I still think Sanchez goes to ground too much, but he is certainly quicker, and hopefully he can be coached. I think there's more chance now that Sanchez will stay over Dyer.
Yeah.
So, Stuart, you think the same you got about Sanchez versus
Dyer?
Dyer?
I think as we've seen a bit of the last sort of few weeks pass by, I thought, we've obviously seen all these rumours of, the club accepting a bid from Spartak, but Sanchez didn't want to go and stuff like that. But then he's obviously appeared in, a couple of games now, and he's actually done pretty well. I mean, he was immense in the Barcelona game, and this wasn't like a Barcelona B team or anything like that. I mean, it was only towards the end of the game when the whole defence was just, on their arse, that stuff started unravelling. But I think, like as Steve said, that I think if you had Dyer in that position ahead of Sanchez on Sunday, we would have lost, because the few times that sort of Mbeumo and Wissa got behind, and there was a couple of times where Sanchez actually put in a bloody good last-minute tackle, which is he does do that quite well, and that's the thing. He has got some really good attributes. He's obviously quick. He's strong. It's just his decision making is the thing that lets him down, and it's just whether that's how long has he been? He's been at the club for 7 odd years. No one's managed to be able to coach that to improve it, and it's whether Ange and his team that he's brought in can do that. But for me, the biggest thing about Dyer versus Sanchez is Dyer has a very similar delusion about himself that Maguire does at Man United, where he thinks he's a much better defender than he actually is. And when you have that mindset and you think you're better than everyone else, and then there's a sort of level of arrogance there, that's not good for the team. And I think I've not seen any messages on Instagram or posts on socials congratulating Sonny, who he's been a teammate of for however many years now. And I think if that's the sort of attitude that Dyer has, then Ange will want it out straight away. So I think that the pendulum has swung, I think, in Sanchez's favour for the moment. But in terms of getting rid of Dyer, this is the problem we've got. We'll probably talk about it briefly later, is that we've got so many players that we're trying to shift and no one wants them. So this is the problem.
Yeah.
The benefit of Dyer, he's only got a year left, so you could potentially do a same thing that we could do with Lloris and write him off. But I think Dyer's gone.
Okay, Isaiah, what about your view? Where does Sanchez fit, if at all, in this squad?
Well, first on Dyer, I'm a little bit hesitant to read too much into any of the social media stuff whenever that sort of talk, regardless of who the player is, whenever that sort of talk kind of jumps up. Just having known, through my sports journalism degree, having known a few people who have companies who manage lots and lots of footballers and overall just lots of athletes' social media accounts, the amount of things that they just circulate through and post without thinking about it. I mean, these people talk about how often they get in trouble. They get called by their athletes, like, you can't post this, that sort of thing. I'm a little bit hesitant to read into that. But at the same time, it is almost the absence of a post for Sonny, which I've kind of been going back to his social media like since all of the talk started. It's the absence of that post that makes me wonder if there's a little more to the story about Eric Dyer not being in the squad at all than just they didn't feel like having him in the team. Which would be understandable. Don't get me wrong. I'd understand not needing him on the bench or wanting him on the pitch, but I wonder if there's a bit more there. And as far as Sanchez goes, I think most of the fan base is on a pretty solid consensus here. No one wants him starting. No one wants him to be Romero's first backup, and no one thinks that him being the first backup to either center back is going to be, the best way forward for us. But certainly as a squad player, I think he's better than Dyer. I think he's got longer than Davies, but then Davies and Dyer, where he can still perform athletically at this level. So I agree with all of the comments saying he should be the fourth center back. Got to bring somebody else in so that it isn't Sanchez, because as good as he can be, like he was against Barcelona, and he was, I thought, very good against Brentford, in moments where he's going to be doing more defending with the ball in front of him rather than running it down, it's the decision-making, like's been said. It's his decision-making that I worry about in those circumstances, and why he really should fall down the center back pecking order if we want to, be challenging at the right end of the table this season.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I say if he goes and we bring in two, that's great. But if we only bring in one and he has to stay, I can see that. Becky, we talked a little bit about the new captain, just in reference to Dyer. What are your feelings? Were you pleased? Is that who you wanted to see be the new captain?
Yeah, I don't think it's any surprise that anybody thought that I was delighted. I did actually share with my own personal friends that I didn't think it should have been Sonny. I actually said I thought it should have been Maddison and Basuma, just because Sonny loves everybody and everybody loves Sonny, and sometimes you need someone who's going to be a little bit kind of firmer. But equally, watching that footage on Friday or Saturday, whatever day it was, of them in the team room and Ange sort of saying, this is the decision I've made. I love that. I love seeing that sort of footage. More of that, please. But yeah, so for that point of view, yeah, I think it's great. And little things like, obviously we'll come on to, but like the huddle and clapping the away fans and all those sort of things. Yeah, I think it's great. And the thing as well that I really liked about the fact that Sonny did get captain is that my first reaction would be, oh, does that mean he's going to play every minute of every game? And Andrew's like, no, you're not. And that happened yesterday. And I massively respect that, because I know the people who don't think that Sonny should have been captain will think, oh, that means he's not playing well enough, he shouldn't play. And Ange subbed him and brought Perisic on. And, in the future, possibly we'll bring Solomon on. And great. And it's not this sort of idea that you're captain and therefore you'll be playing all of the matches. So I really like that as well. So that shows that although I am delighted that Sonny's captain, because I have got, and it's weird over the weekend, and obviously with Jack, I had to kind of mention to Jack Wednesday, Thursday that Kane was possibly going, and it was just, he was so sad on Friday. But then on Saturday, to sort of say that Sonny was captain, he was really happy. It's Jack's birthday yesterday, and he was back being really positive. And I've got so many pictures of Sonny that I can kind of share, and not so much of Kane, that, yeah, I am thoroughly delighted. But equally, if he, we'll come on to it later, but there are parts of his game that he does need to improve slightly, I think. But yeah, in answer to your question, I was delighted that he's captain.
Good. Steve, any insights from the inner workings of the club that you got wind of in terms of, people thinking that was the right move, or anyone discontent with the captain's choice? Not
that I'm aware of, no. And I think we didn't really discuss it on Sunday, to be honest. It didn't come up, but I'm all for it. I really get Becky's point about having kind of somebody who's maybe a bit more authoritative, but I think in having Romero and Maddison as vice captains helps that. I don't think Romero has a temperament to be captain. I wouldn't want a player, and I'm old school of this, I wouldn't want a player to come into the team and then, a few weeks after signing or whenever we sign Maddison, to go straight into being captain. So I just don't like that. I think they need more of a bond with the existing team. So I think Sonny's a good choice. Obviously, he's captain for Korea or South Korea or whatever you want to call it. So I think it's a good choice. Technically South Korea, yeah. So yeah, I think it's a good choice. And I think, as Becky said, great point. He was hooked off. It was a bit alarming that he got hooked off and Romero was off, and then we're coming down to Maddison. So this felt a bit weird in the game. But yeah, I'm all for him. I haven't heard anything to the contrary.
Yeah. Oh, I think having the enforcer Romero following Sonny around a little bit, I think that gives you all the muscle you might need to keep people in line.
Well, we'll come on to it, but he was scary at times, particularly when he got subbed off, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's an excellent point that you bring up there about what happened with Romero. I did get the word that, I saw this earlier, that this was breaking news, that the manager was going to keep him on, right? He didn't keep Romero on, but when he came over to the sideline, he said he thought he was Eric Dyer, so they moved him right off immediately. So he's having some sort of evidently out of body experience, so they got him off the pitch quickly. Anyway, so well, let's talk a little bit about the game, and particularly the debutants. So Isaiah, let's talk about our brand new center back that got chucked in. We're very thin there, one injury, and all of a sudden we're down to Sanchez. So clearly we need to continue to strengthen. I hope we will. But what are your thoughts on Mickey's debut?
Well, I mean, it was better than I expected. I was ready for him to have not a bad performance, but a shaky one. I was ready to see him hesitate, kind of, pull out of a few challenges, maybe hesitate to step through the ball on a few occasions where he might have won it. But there was none of that. I mean, from the start, he looked as comfortable as Romero did, and just being out there. And there was multiple times where, in the future, you're going to expect him to maybe take a touch and play a pass, where in this game against Brentford, he just smashed it out of play. But in terms of his confidence, in terms of not getting beaten 1v1, in terms of not committing a foul, like it says there. Oh, wait, does it? Okay, well, he also didn't commit a foul.
Yeah, you're right. He did not commit a foul.
And not getting dribbled past, not committing a foul, plenty of action for him. I mean, that above and beyond what I could have expected in terms of just how flawlessly he just slotted right into the team and defended really well, despite the little deflection, unfortunately beating Vicario for the goal. But
yeah, and I think that's a huge point. I mean, he starts the match with thinking he's going to have Romero. 15 minutes in, he's got Sanchez. Now, fortunately, he hasn't been at the club that long, so he may not know what that should concern him. So, and then he has a deflection that is the reason for the goal, because I think otherwise it's a fairly routine save for Vicario. Becky, what'd you see when you were watching from Mickey van de Ven?
Yeah, the same thing I said at the top of the show. I think it's great that he was put in. I think we'd go back to Sanchez. Sanchez was probably going to play 10 minutes at the end of the game for Mickey van de Ven, and it ended up being that he played full match because of Romero's injury. You can see, I wasn't at the game because it was Jack's birthday. You can see from as soon as Romero scores, he looks really dazed. And I've seen lots of it today on Twitter, people sort of sharing it because it's shown in the highlights. But you can see instantly he's kind of like, whoa, don't touch me. It's not that bit. And I think when you look at it closely, he actually heads the knee of the goalkeeper. So it's really clear that he's not right and he has to come off. And I think that's brilliant. And again, more respect to Ange, because he was like, Romero's like, no, I'm fine. And then he's like, get off. And like we just said, he's vice captain. And one of the things about when he was made vice captain, Twitter was awash with Romero being called over by the ref to calm the team down when Romero is probably our feistiest player, and that's hilarious. 15 minutes in yesterday, we've got Ange going, no, you need to come off, and this is the reason, and yada yada. We all know why Romero wants to stay on. He will not want to miss the United game, and the business that's come out afterwards about whether they filled the right form in for the concussion check. It was clear he'd gone off because he got a concussion. I just hope that people were saying, is it going to be another one of those rules that they changed, one of those retrospective rules that they changed afterwards once we've been done for it. I think it was clear he needed to come off. But going back to Mickey van de Ven, there's been so much praise for him because there's been comparisons to Vertonghen, and he was really good in the air, and we'll come on to it later on. But because of the way the sort of pre-season turned out, where you sort of had one team for 45 minutes and another team for the other 45 minutes, apart from Shakhtar, which was more like a normal kind of fixture, is that, Vicario hasn't had that back line in front of him because Mickey van de Ven's only just turned up. So that is going to take time. And, I think we were a lot calmer second half defensively than we were first half. You know, there were times when every time they attacked in the first half, you're really worried they were going to score. And, you know, to be fair to Vicario and Mickey van der Ven, they did sort of step up and kind of, you know, got more into the game and kind of relaxed more. And yeah, I think it was just brilliant. I know we're all doing this in a funny order, but the fact that we equalised just before halftime helped as well, I think, because that would have, you know, given them a little bit of a boost to go in, losing. And yeah, so there's a lot, you know, we had a Leicester game called off in pre-season. You know, it was all a bit of a hodgepodge. Obviously the Kane thing last minute, whether they knew about it, whether they did or did not, this all kind of affected the fixture. And I think actually I would have taken 2-2 before kickoff, and in the end was kind of reasonably pleased, maybe a little bit disappointed that we didn't go on and win it. So all that kind of all in all, I think like I said, the debutants did really, really well, because there was a lot of pressure. You know, it's not Conte, but equally, I think, you know, Andrew's going to be somebody where you have to step up and you do this because we've got such a massive squad that there's always somebody else on the coattails of your position. So I think I was really pleased and good for him, you know.
And Stuart, you know, speaking of another debutant, that was Matter's first game, and that cross he had in for the first goal. What did you think of his performance and how he did particularly?
Yeah, I mean that cross alone, he should have got man of the match. That was an incredible. Well, it wasn't really a cross; it was a set piece. I mean, that was absolutely incredible. So the fact that we've, because this is the ironic thing, is that we've lost Kane, who's passing and distribution around the pitch as he's, you know, got older, has become absolutely incredible. But we've actually got someone who can do that on the pitch, but then he's also impeccable at set pieces, which Kane absolutely bloody wasn't. So yeah, there's obviously going to be a bit of time to sort out the attacking threat and all that stuff. But for his first game for the sort of in the Premier League for us, there was a couple of times where he's a little bit sloppy, but I think that was just more about Brentford, because Brentford were pressing really, really quickly and very aggressive. So we had to sort of move the ball quite quickly, and I think it took us. We kept sort of going through phases where we were a little bit slow getting rid of the moving the ball on. But all in all, like him, sort of, well, he got 2 assists at the end of the day, so you can't really complain on that as an away debut. So I'm very looking forward to seeing how he's going to do when he's got the home crowd behind him and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm really happy with Madders, and I think he's going to be really, really good for us. It's just, as ever, if he got injured, who do we have to come in? That, you know, and that's going to be the constant question for a year or two, I think, while we're properly rebuilding not just the first 11, but the whole squad, because there is a quality drop in a lot of positions.
Phil asked us a question that I wanted to ask, if anyone knows. We were picking up on the television we were watching. Every time he touched the ball, particularly the first half, he was getting booed by the Brentford. So can anyone give me insight into what was going on there?
Yes, I can. So Krill answered a question for me earlier. Thank you very much. I'll answer one of his. So apparently when he was at Leicester, he scored a few goals against Brentford and just went completely OTT in his celebration. And it's literally that. Some Brentford fans, and they just think he's a bit of a douche because of how he celebrated when he scored. So it's a bit salty. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you remember, though, he used to get booed at home. I remember last year when even in the 6-2 game, he does his whole kind of like celebration with his thing, doesn't he? And people boo. And I said to Jackie, if you booed, it's because you've made an impact on clubs, haven't you? You've scored or you've over celebrated or something. So, you know, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing.
All right. Well, I'm glad I got that explanation. So Isaiah, what about you? How just overall performance from individual players that you thought was notable, that you picked out, good or bad, that you want to talk about here?
But also to add something quickly to that, I was told by a Brentford fan on Twitter that he shushed them, like he shushed the whole stadium a few years back, and they were very upset that he shushed them, because apparently that's a big deal.
Need to chill out a bit, don't they?
Yeah, they're very sensitive over there in West London. Okay.
But yeah, in terms of some of the, like, on the statistical side of things, some of the things that stand out to me were just the really Skip's role in the team. maybe if I had studied Ange a bit more ahead of this game, I wouldn't be as surprised. But as much as I know that the fullbacks tend to come inside and that often bypasses one or two of the midfielders in the build-up, it was just the extent to which that Skip was just on the outsides of that build-up. And looking at the stats, he had 49 touches compared to Emerson's 134. So first, in that right center midfield space, it was Emerson all day. Emerson and Bissouma were the foundation of that build-up. Now, Udogie came in, he had 86 touches, but still, compared to 138 for Bissouma and 134 for Emerson, the Skip and Udogie really were not as involved, particularly Skip, as I would have thought they would have been in that early build-up. Skip was left a lot more advanced, and when we had the ball and off the ball, he was just used for cleanup and just a 1-yard pass away a lot of the time. So that was interesting to see, and it actually worked very well with Emerson building up out of the back under pressure. Who would have thought we'd ever say that? But it really did. He had 91% pass accuracy, bettered only in the team by Bissouma and Udogie, who were 92 and 94. Or actually, I think Skip was also 94. But really good pass accuracy. He only lost the ball once, which for someone who was all over the pitch like he was is quite good. That many touches to only lose the ball once is quite good. So I thought Emerson just really, really impressed me overall.
What do you think about the situation with the goal? So here he pops up because he's playing more advanced, and he pops up into a perfect position after the ball generously is bounced to him and credited an assist for Madison, in my opinion. Happy for my fantasy team that he got the assist, but I thought that was a generous decision.
Yeah. We can hear HG moaning from here, can't we?
Do we think that that's going to be something, because clearly we have to find goals. We're missing 30 goals from Senior Kane. So is this going to be something we should expect more of, Stuart, where we're finding players like Emerson, who's not known for the goal threat, but if they're going to be in those spots around the box, are we going to see more of that?
I think so. I think that's what Ange is all about in his philosophy and his system, isn't he? He's like, if you get an opportunity to shoot, do it. So I think we will see that. And the fact we've had 2 defenders score for us in the first game is great. So, I mean, Real is just next level at the moment. I don't know, what particular moment that it's clicked for him, but he just feels like he's just got so much confidence, and I think he's in a role and he's doing a role that I think he feels really comfortable in, and that obviously that's shown in what Isaiah's saying around the stats and all that kind of stuff. But that finish was quality. If that was Maddison or the Kane or someone like that, people would be going great goal and all that kind of stuff, and it was a really sort of great finish. And I don't know if any of you guys remember the little flick that he did in the second half, which was just like, I had to rewind that because I was like, what have you just done? Okay, go for it. But so I'm really happy with what he's going to do. It's just, again, it's the same conversation, is if he gets injured, who does that role? Because Porro doesn't do it as well as he does. So that's, again, very interesting.
Yeah, we're one injury away in many positions from a lot of troublers, no doubt. And I don't think we're going to be able to fix all the problems before the end of the window if we fix any of them. But so let's talk a little bit about the goals that we conceded. What were your thoughts when you saw back the penalty decision? Obviously, the official didn't see enough in it to call it on the field, on the pitch, and then we played probably 2 to maybe 3 minutes before the stoppage of play came that allowed the VAR referee to signal down that they wanted to take a look at it. And of course, sent him over for the check on the sideline, which is, ridiculous. What were your thoughts on that? Pen, for you?
Son shouldn't have even been in that position in the first place. And if he hadn't been, it probably wouldn't have even had this discussion. I think it is very soft. However, it didn't surprise me. What's disappointing is that ref seemed reasonably well positioned. He took a lot of time. He didn't book the guy for diving, so he obviously felt there was enough contact, but not enough for it to be a penalty. It's that same thing. As soon as it goes to the the screen, they tell them to change their decision. I've watched a lot of cricket this summer because I love cricket. I just think that it's unnecessary, the screen anymore. You should just go in your ear and go, yeah, you've missed something, you need to change your decision, like they've done with the Women's World Cup. Just put it over the tannoy. Yeah, you need to change your decision. Is that penalty? Why have the whole go over to the screen, watch the 14 replays to then go, oh, it's going to be a penalty anyway? I just think it's silly. And we've had it in our favour. You know, Kane's had situations where we've had to wait, for nearly 5 minutes to take a penalty. I just think it's silly. So that's a separate issue. But, in terms of going back to it, I think, when everything's slowed down and you've got it in super slow-mo, there is a slight contact, but not enough for it to go down. But we've seen it before with Son when he's in that position. He's just all over the place.
Steve, do you get a sense of what the home fans felt?
I'll be a bit stronger. So I was sat with some Tottenham fans, and the response was pretty furious about it. Like, it wasn't a penalty in my book. And even chatted at half-time some Brentford fans, and they said it was soft. So if the other team's saying it's soft, then it's a bit silly. And I think what just winds me up, and it wound up the Brentford fans, is the amount of time. Like, it just ruins it. Like when Vicario clattered, I can't remember who he clattered now in the second half, and then there was a bit of a anxious wait in the stadium over VAR or not. It just ruins the flow of the game, and it takes football's supposed to be fun. Like, when you can't celebrate a effing goal because you don't know whether it's a goal or not, it takes the joy out of it, and it's poorly implemented. They need to change it. And like, when you've got, like I said, when you've got the fans who benefited from a VAR decision still moaning about the VAR decision and the length of time, that says it all for me. So I don't think, I can see what was given, but I don't think it's a penalty. Incredibly soft. And it's so long after. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I think Isaiah and I were at the North Carolina Spurs pub in town, and we were watching, and that was our reaction, is that to go with the call on the pitch, there was not enough in it to go one way or the other. I mean, if he give it live, I would have been upset, but to actually go back and change it seems just the height of, and maybe not even the spirit. I think Isaiah, did you read something they were trying to change the threshold or something about these decisions?
Yeah, they apparently were given a directive and publicized directive that they should be holding out for a higher standard of contact. The definition of contact, they wanted them to have a little bit of a higher threshold for that. Little touches, little taps on the shoulder. In fact, in the I watched a lot of games this weekend. I think it was the Barcelona-Getafe game. There's one where, it was called on the pitch, but the VAR overturned it, and I was able to see a little clip of it afterwards on Twitter, where you can hear what the VAR is saying. He's saying, with the standard of contact now, it's just not enough in it. It's just a little tug on the shoulder. He goes down too easily, and that felt like it should have been the same reasoning used by the VAR in the Brentford game. But the problem, so consistently, at least when I'm watching the Premier League, particularly the Premier League, VAR is always looking for if they can find any reason to change the decision, rather than just like making sure it's not a glaring error, making sure something hasn't been really messed up on the pitch. They're always looking for the most finite detail that they can change the decision, the easiest way for them to get involved. And I think that's so backwards. Why are you trying, if the referees decided that's not enough contact, why are you trying to find the angle and the speed of video that makes it look like it is enough contact? If you have to slow it down to almost frame by frame rate, zoom in on the foot and go, yeah, I guess his foot did come across the top of his, that's not enough contact to bring anyone down. It's not enough for a penalty. It's not a clear and obvious error. And I think it's ridiculous for the VAR to recommend he go to the screen when we all know that means he's going to change the decision. I think it's just silly.
And it's absolutely unique to the Premier League as well. We're the only main league using VAR who use it the way that we do. It's shocking.
Yeah,
it is shocking. And then so now it's 1-1. And that leads very quickly in about 8-9 minutes to the second goal. And I Becky, what were your thoughts on the second goal? We talked a little bit about how Van de Ven deflects it, but did you recall the build up and what led to that goal?
Yeah, I think it's kind of Sanchez is like a running back, isn't it? It's not defensively a great goal to concede. I know we've positively said that Van de Ven and Sanchez grew into the game, but like I said before, I do think in the first half, we defensively were quite poor. Royal gets skinned, doesn't he, on the near side, and it's not brilliant. But like I said, nobody thought the game was going to be lacking in goals. So that's not an excuse, but I think we could tell that that's an area that we were going to concede in. So yeah, I think it's just like I said, it's unfortunate that Van de Ven does flick over him. Vicario's got to shout louder. I remember Lloris conceding goals like that as well. It's just they'll gel. They will get used to each other. Sanchez could have been the person who made the deflection. It didn't really necessarily matter who it was. So yeah, it's like I just said. I was just worried that they were going to build in confidence and they were going to keep coming at us. So that's why it was so good to see us equalise. But it's not a great goal defensively.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Emerson was immense. I mean, I thought he had a great game, but there's a fundamental, I don't want to say problem, but fundamental weakness in Angeball, which is that ball to basically the corner flag or down the channel that's going over the head of the fullback. And Emerson takes a terrible path to the ball. He gets beat around, and so he's now completely out of the play. And the cutback comes in, obviously, for Wissa to or however that's pronounced, sorry, to Brentford. It puts the goal in. And in fact, this almost carbon copy was the big miss by Mbeumo in the 55th, right? That easily, on any other day, that probably goes in the back of the net because we just got a nice hop up a little bit too high off the turf for him to be able to keep it on frame. But it's basically the same thing. It's the same ball, and that ball was on against Barcelona all game long. It's that cross-field corner flag type driven ball or something that's just between the center back and the fullback over the fullback's head. And if they're not deep enough or can't get back enough to head it out, it's going to be a problem all season. And I don't know if that's ever going to change. Does anyone have any insight? I feel like from what I've watched, that's just the fundamental weakness that system exposes us to. Steve, do you have any thoughts on it? I mean, that problem that may be continuing is that ball's on seemingly all game.
It seemed like a bit of a problem, didn't it? But I think in terms of the goal we conceded, I think it was a bit Spursy because everybody was a tiny bit at fault. Like nobody was massively at fault. Everybody was a tiny bit at fault. And if one player wasn't a little bit at fault, there wouldn't have been a goal. But you probably have to ask Cam or JP, who watched Angeball a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I think we just lost Steve.
Yeah.
I got on.
Yeah.
We can hear you, but you're frozen.
That's all right. There you go. You're back.
He's back.
I'm back. Blame the dodgy internet in the Shire. But yeah, I think you'd have to ask JP or Cam, who probably watched Angeball more than we have. But
yeah,
it did seem to happen a few times, and I think it happened a few times in pre-season as well. I think you mentioned Barcelona. We're kind of picking it out.
Yep. Yeah, it's definitely something that bears watching. I'm going to be curious to see how it's dealt with because, there are going to be teams that are probably going to look at that. And if you don't figure out a way to stop it, they're going to keep hitting you with that ball all game long. So when it comes to the goals conceded, Isaiah, did you feel Vicario was really at fault for either? And did you see anything that you thought was positive or more negative when it comes to our brand new goalkeeper?
Well, I thought Vicario played well. I don't think either goal is too much his fault. I mean, maybe a tiny bit the second goal. Yeah, the first one was a penalty. The second goal, just because he might need to be a little more vocal, keep his defenders from touching the ball. He knows he's got it in his grasp. He needs to let them know that it's going to be a routine save, because otherwise it's a defender's job to put a foot on the ball. If their goalkeeper gives them no shout, that's what they do. But other than that, no, I didn't see any glaring issues. I also don't think he had a ton of opportunities to, really show off his goalkeeping skills. But other than the 2 goals and the miss from Mbeumo, there wasn't a ton of work for him in terms of really, really challenging stops. He made a few good ones. But back to the thing with the the sort of ball into that channel between the fullback and the center back or over the fullback's head. If you think about, I like to compare to Man City just because the stylistically so similar. If you think about all the times we've beaten City over the last few years and all of those counterattacking performances, it's been that ball from Kane to either Kulusevski in between the center back and the advanced fullback, or Son, that's cut them open over and over and over again. And that's something that Pet's system struggles with. You know, if he's like the gold standard of that modern football, his system still sort of has that weakness. And the biggest way he covers that is, one, with an athletic goalkeeper in Ederson who doesn't always make the best decisions. And two, having athletic mobile center backs now with Akanji and Ake. I mean, the way that they're able to cover just on athleticism alone and their enormously high football IQs is what's sort of digging them out of that situation with that ball into that channel. And I think if Romero and Van de Ven can be sort of coached to do that same thing and have the confidence to cover those channels a little bit more like the way Sanchez and Van de Ven did in the second half, I think we'll mitigate that risk, but it's always going to be there as sort of a consequence of how we're going to play under Postecoglou.
These are the not great vision. That's a too small a slide. I'll read it out for the people who are visually challenged like myself. Becky, these are the team stats. So clearly a big difference from last season is we had the ball most of the game. We also, I think I would have gotten this from the pod, Steve, that you were on, is I think we had more passes in their half than we had in any game last year.
Correct.
And yet, clearly, according to this app, which is dodgy in my opinion, FOTMob, they had 4 big chances, and I rewatched a good chunk of the game. I just don't know where the 4 big chances. I mean, obviously the Mbeumo miss was one, and then there was really only 2 saves that Vicario made. One that he parried back into the center that they then, poor shot right back at him, and then the one from an angle that came in real early before the first goal. I think it was. Yeah, it was after our goal. It was before they scored the penalty. And Mbeumo got loose on the left-hand side and fired one at the near post that was deflected out for a corner by Vicario. I don't know where the big 4 chances, but clearly we didn't create a lot of chances, right? So even if the expected goal here is 1.3, it clearly should.
Oh, good.
I'll carry on. I think that for me, I seem to notice that was, I think Sky put a caption up that we'd scored at the time. I think it was 1-1. We'd scored our only shot on target and they'd had maybe 2 or 3. Just going back to the point about Vicario, the thing that worries me is his kind of playing out from the back, it used the ball with his feet. I think I felt that I know we scored fairly early, but we were quite nervous, and I think it was clear that the kind of crowd were getting on his back, and every time he hit the ball, they were kind of jeering him, and him sort of playing it out sideways and kind of was a bit nervy. And there were times when he just kicked it straight out from goal kicks and things like that. So that's something I think he does need to work on, because that's a confidence thing, and that kind of builds the confidence from the back, doesn't it? I think, but that will come. He's still relatively new, but yeah, going back into
Lloris was doing that, and he's 10 years older than him. So
exactly, and it reminded me of Lloris a little bit, that kind of element of it. Yeah, and that's something that opposing supporters can get on, can't they? And kind of he needs to sort of learn very quickly. But yeah, in terms of going back to the chances, I think it's isn't it 70% the highest possession we've had, for something like 2 seasons or maybe even more than that. So
away game.
That was, really positive. And I think that, they said again over commentary, I think Brentford only lost twice at home last season. So, if we look at that kind of element of it, is a reasonably good result. And like I said before, we came back twice from behind. There is everyone that sort of seems to have written anything reasonably calmly, maybe apart from Jamie O'Hara. He's the only person I seem to have read that's really criticised us. Is that there's green shoots and it's positive, and there are things that weren't brilliant that they can work on, whether it be defensively. Possibly maybe a good point while Jack's kind of just plugging himself back in to talk now about our kind of attacking threat, the fact that we didn't have many chances. Now, is that Richarlison's fault, or is it because he didn't have the service? What do we think about that?
I don't think.
Sorry, can I just jump in really quick? So Dad has lost. He went to his office earlier, and he was broadcasting from there. He's lost power, so he's not going to be able to get back on for this screen.
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead, guys.
Don't worry. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So what do we think? Is it service to Richarlison, or is it Richarlison, or is it?
I think for this game, it was more the service, because I don't remember many chances where he had really good balls either crossed in or fed into him for him to have it. And let's be real, out of possession, Brentford packed the box. They packed just outside the box. So we didn't have a lot of room to do much anyway. So that was obviously, they were going full low block on us. And Maddison talked about that after the game, that, that's something that they as a team have to figure out. And that's been the story of us for years, us being able to really sort of beat a low block team. But yeah, I think in that game, I think there just wasn't enough coming from the wings. And that's the frustration for me, was that we didn't bring Solomon on at all. I would have liked him to have come on for at least, give him 10, 15 minutes or something, because he is very proactive. He does take people on. So whether that draws a foul, draws a penalty, anything, and I think just Kulu at the moment just seems very, I don't know if it's a confidence thing or whatever. He just seems to be very one-dimensional in how he takes on players, where he'll sort of go one way, cut back in into his left foot, and then try and do something. And I think as a defender, that's really, really easy to play against. So I think if he continues down that road in terms of form and his way of playing, I'm pretty certain that Ange is going to change that, because it's really ineffective. So we'll have to see. But I don't want people to be piling on to Richarlison after one game. No. When he's just coming in as the main man away at Brentford. He will need time. The whole team needs time. That's the first time as a unit they've played together. So they've not had any preseason games where they've been able to play in that team at all. So we're now in a situation where we're using the season to build the team, which you don't ideally want, but that's where we're at. So, yeah, I think Richarlison's going to need, I don't know, I would give him half a dozen games before you start really getting on his back. But it's football, so we need to score goals. So he might not have that long.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Do you agree with that? Yeah.
All I was going to say is, kind of, I don't know whether, well, presumably it did come through on TV. There's a few balls into Richarlison which were just off. A few balls in behind the defence, Brentford defence, that he was nearly on the end of. And it's kind of fine points, isn't it? If that had, a slightly less pace on it, he could have got a toe to it. So I think it's in margins at the moment. I don't think the service is great. I do think he went up missing a few times. There's a few times, when you kind of sat there and you can't remember, like, basically seeing him. But then also Kane had the same thing quite often when we were struggling to break teams down. So I think, and obviously Kane would drop deeper than him, so kind of come back into the game a bit. But I think we have got to give him time, as Stu said, and it is going to take time for the entire team to gel. And obviously don't want us to be, but we could get spanked by United, and we could get spanked in the next 3 games, or we could win the next 3 games. And I think whatever happens, with not going to be too negative about it, but also not too optimistic. It's going to take time to bed in new players, new coach. We haven't played this type of football since Poch.
What's really disappointing for me, I think, is that even in the Shakhtar game, if they did know that Kane was leaving, why did Kane play such a long time? Because in most of the matches, they played half and half. And Sunday was the first time Son, Kulusevski and Richarlison had played like that, because even in the Barcelona game, Son didn't play. So that seems a silly decision to make, that he was really kind of chucked in. I know there's been games before where he's needed to play, but he hasn't played in that position. He's played left wing because Kane's played up front. So, I think that's a bit unfortunate. However, I agree. I think, Steve, one of the chances you were referring to was in the first half, I think, wasn't it? Maddison slotted it through, didn't he? And he was almost on it. That the breakout from Bissouma that I seem to have seen retweeted all day. If you watch Richarlison, he's massively off the pace. Kulusevski kind of overtakes him. So whether that injury that he still kind of picked up in last week is that kind of still affecting him. But we're getting to the point where, you know, with all three of them, I said earlier, you know, Richarlison, Son and Kulusevski, we can't keep saying they're injured or they're coming back from injury and they've got to this. You know, there is a situation where we have hopefully up front, certainly on the wings, got strength in depth that, like we said, was that Solomon. We've got Perisic. You know, there are people that are going to come in. And I've read a lot today about people saying Richarlison shouldn't play. It should be Son that plays up front and Solomon should play left wing, or he should play right wing and Perisic. So I don't necessarily think Ange would make that change for the United game. But like we've sort of said, we don't know. He may do that. He may say, actually, no, I'm going to bring the Celso in for the next game. And, you know, we don't know whether he seemed to have a starting 11 in pre-season, certainly at the Shakhtar game. But then, of course, Kane's not in it. So we just don't know what he will do.
Yeah. I don't. Sorry. Thanks for taking over while I was gone. I appreciate Becky and Steve the help. I mean, I don't know what I missed, but I with my comment, I don't know if you guys covered this, but we talk about the lack of width from our wingers, because when you're playing inverted wingers, constantly cutting inside to occupy the same space that the H of the fullbacks are in, and it just got all really compact. So I don't know. I think somebody recommended this, and might have been you, Isaiah, say, why don't we just flop Decky and Son so they're more inclined to go down the line and cross it back, which seems to be a better avenue sometimes than just trying to cut in and find that space when you've got 8 or 9 guys packed in the box. It just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So I'm hoping to see that change. I'm not disappointed. I'm not down on the team. I thought it was a good performance. I'm really excited. I was thrilled to have us have the ball and actually make chances and try to win the game and pressure the other team. I felt like there were times where I actually felt like the community stadium sounded like a bit of a library. I mean, it was very quiet and edgy and nervy when they just couldn't get the ball out of their own half over and over and over again. So I love that. That was great. I want to see more of that. But I do think the number of really clear-cut chances were a little thin. I think you might have talked about this. I think Madison, Isaiah, you pulled the stat for me. Madison had six chances created, and then the front three had 2 combined. Yeah, so
I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, that front line as a unit in terms of, you know, Son, Richarlison and Decky, or any of those combinations, we all know that if you're taking someone at Kane's level out of that front line, it's not going to instantly just work, because it's relationships, it's who's knowing who's going to do what at what time and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, Richarlison just hasn't played enough football over the last season or so to generate those relationships. So I think it will take a little, again, it's the theme, isn't it? It's time, it's patience to let the team bed in. And but the good thing is, from what I've seen of Ange, not just so far in pre-season, but the stuff that I've seen of him at Celtic and other teams, is that he's not scared to change things. So if he thinks that something might not work, or they need to change some of the players because of the particular team that we're playing, he'll just do it. He won't just keep going with the same players that don't necessarily meet what we need in that particular game. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if we see 1 or 2 changes in that sort of midfield and attack against.
Which seems a good segue to mention Bissouma, because, you know, what on earth was Conte doing? Why did he not play? He gets player of the match, man of the match on his debut for Tottenham, like, of this season. This was not his debut, is it? You know, what is that about? Why did Conte continue to persist with players that were either injured or not in the right form? And I'd add Son to that. What's that about?
But he's a world-class coach, Becky. What do we know?
Yep.
I mean, I think that, Becky, you were spot on. It's been pointed out on the Cheese Room pod by Muir, who calls, you know, our former manager the serial winner, who said Bissouma wasn't going to be ready for months to play in his system. And that may absolutely 100% be true. You know, I mean, Conte's system is very regimented, and you need to do exactly what you're told to do. And if everyone does their job and everyone's really good at their job, they're going to be successful. It just wasn't the right place and time, obviously, for Spurs. And I'm glad to be rid of them just because it had no future. But this performance and what we've seen in preseason and what we saw a little bit emerging at the end of last season under Mason, shows why we were all, I should say, ecstatic when we signed him, because I saw him come into Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and just run the game and run our whole team off the pitch not so long ago. And this, and his performance, and yeah, he made some mistakes. He had some errant passes. He missed, but given the fact that of our 634 passes, 112 of them were made by one player, tells you, one, how critical he is. And then, but my question for each of you, and I'll start with you, Steve, is, he could get injured, and he's going to be missing a large part of the early part of the new calendar year in the African Cup, right? I am correct about that, right?
Right.
So who do you slot in to play behind what is clearly going to be an instrumental player for us all season?
Dyer.
And Ndombele.
And a double pivot. Dyer and Ndombele in a double pivot. That's what it is. We had solved it. All right, phone up the club.
I think Saar could do the job. I think I want to see Saar being moved slightly further forward, but I think Saar could do the job. Skip can play a bit more defensively in that role. So I think we've got cover. Like, it's not great, proper first team ready cover, but I think we've got cover, so I'm not too worried. Kind of, at the moment, like kind of Becky when you said debut, for me it almost was his debut because we barely saw him last year.
Feels like the only time he started as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is horrendous when you think about it.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the midfield situation is obviously, there's all these stories about Højbjerg going to Atletico Madrid and stuff like that. But unless you guys can sort of tell me if I'm wrong, but how many actual CDMs or anything are we actually being, or a deep line midfielder are we actually being linked with? I haven't seen any other than Gallagher. So I don't think he's going to go out of Chelsea now. I don't know. So that is the question. If you're going to sell PEH as well, and then you get rid of, Bissouma's injured or he's off at the African Nations, because Saar could be at the African Nations as well, right? Because he'll be there with Senegal.
Oh, good point. Yeah. Good point. That's the next one. So, Isaiah, what do you think? Let's assume no one is sold. All the midfielders stay through the end of the window, including Pierre, and everyone's healthy. But Bissouma is ruled out for whatever reason because of a, let's say, yellow card suspension, or he's going to be gone to the tournament. Who would you slot into that spot?
Well, if everyone's healthy, it's Bentancur, right?
Oh,
so when the African Cup of Nations comes along, I hope Bentancur is at least close to being fit and ready to play. I mean, I think he's supposed to be before the winter break. He's supposed to be back. So
we're hearing late October, I think.
Yeah, so I would think that Bentancur is ideally you'd have them both in the team, right? I mean, I think those two with Maddison is an absolutely ridiculously good midfield. I mean, the difficulty to dispossess those three guys just playing amongst themselves will be incredible. And when there's no Bissouma, hopefully he can basically just play every single game until Bentancur is fit. Because that's the obvious replacement. He can do most of the same things, impossible to dispossess, great passer of the ball, great tackler.
But do you think Lo Celso could play in that role if needed?
Yeah.
He is very good at winning the ball and driving forward, and his passing is good. I keep seeing stories of him potentially us being in negotiations with Napoli or something like that. So it's a bit of a weird situation with him. I don't know whether we are actually trying to get some money for him, because I think we probably could actually get quite a decent fee for him if he was to go. But that just seems a bit crazy to me to potentially have someone like Højbjerg and Lo Celso out.
Yeah. Well, I think Lo Celso or Chelsea or whatever the pronunciation should be is he. It was a brief period of time when under Jose he was really our best player, and he was all over the pitch and really quite dramatic in his play. I just worry about his durability, how he's just a little light. and he gets taken off the ball a little bit, I think, and maybe he's changed. Since I haven't seen him play for almost 2 years, maybe he's developed a little bit more. But I worry a little bit about him playing that role, the Basuma role, just because he might be easily more bossed off the ball than Basuma, who you cannot. If you're either fouling him or you're not getting the ball off him, because I mean he's not quite peak Moussa Dembele, but I mean it's very reminiscent of what I fell in love with so many years ago watching that guy play. I still will evidently will see a clip on my feed and pause just so I can watch 30 seconds of Dembele play football. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
He had quite a good pre-season though, didn't he? So I was thinking, and then there were rumours about how when Valise signed that Lo Celso had spoken to him, and with Romero being vice captain, you think maybe he is staying. He does seem happier. I've said before, I just didn't think he was happy here. He never seemed to smile, never seemed to enjoy himself. When you've got Reguilón smiling all the time, I just thought he wasn't happy. But then in pre-season, he seemed to kind of turn a corner. He was very good against Barcelona. Since Kane's gone, it's gone a bit quiet again. And then you're right, the rumours have kind of recirculated today that he's moving on again. And you're thinking, really, I know we can get a fee for him. He is a really quality player, but if he's such a great quality, can't he stay here? Why do we have to sell him? There's others that we could sell before him.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that if our wing play, front three, continues to be an issue, I know you can play Maddison up on the right. And that would create another spot in the midfield. And I think Lo Celso could absolutely slot into that. So you could have Basuma, Bentancur, Lo Celso, and Maddison out on the right. And I think that would cause a lot of problems for every team in the league.
Yeah, agreed.
Can we come back to 2 points? One Adrian raised a long time ago.
Sure thing.
Not the one you think I'm going to talk about. So Adrian, you asked, probably 40 minutes ago, if there's any update on naming rights. I have exclusive news.
Don't do a joke, Steve.
I was doing a joke. I've no news, and also if I did, I probably wouldn't be saying in a public forum. So who knows? I think it'll come at some point.
Wrestlers, microwave burgers.
I expect it could be a while though. And the other thing I wanted to raise a bit more genuinely is about mentality. So I spoke to 2 people from a club after the game, and I said, I was trying to be upbeat. I was like, we had a good game. I'm optimistic. Draw away to Brentford isn't a bad result. Both people kind of snapped at me. I'm like, no, we should be beating these teams. We should have won today. That's not good enough. And I was like, whoa. I was like, these are the same people I was speaking to last season. And the mentality is very different. And I don't quite know whether that's coming from Ange. I know, Scott Munn is very win everything. He wants to win something every season. Maybe it's Champions League, maybe it's a league. Obviously, it can't be Champions League this year for us, and it ain't going to be the league this year for us. But League Cup, just win something. That's your goal every year, win something. So I don't know whether him and Ange are just bringing a bit of a different mentality to the team. And
I'm sorry, Steve. I'm sorry to interrupt. What win something? Win something.
I know. It's been a while. How long?
I was thinking, I was like, does he know what he's let himself in for? Has he come to the right club here?
I don't know what you mean. Sorry.
Is that why he hasn't officially started either?
Yeah, it's late.
What is going on there? That's such a weird, because he's like,
And has everyone seen today pictures of Paratici? Paratici was there, and he's been seen with some of the.
What, he was at the Brentford game?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, I don't know where he was.
Well, apparently he was key in getting Valise, wasn't he? Apparently. So, yeah. Don Paratici.
And they're saying that his capacity is still as an advisory role, but if Scott Munn is here, how does that work? I don't really know.
Paratici would have worked for Scott Munn, because Scott Munn is correct. The head of football for the club, isn't he? So he's effectively he's Paratici's boss, or whoever's, because that was the thing, wasn't it? It was Scott Munn, a director of football, and then obviously the recruitment and coaches underneath. So.
Correct. Scott Munn is currently not with the club.
Even though people keep seeing him, don't they, as well? Wasn't he there at Barcelona? And people keep.
He was there at Shakhtar. He was right.
John was saying, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He gets invited to games as a guest of a club. He's not.
Okay.
He is not currently employed by the club,
Right.
but I suspect he will be soon.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
But I think, going back to the mentality point, Steve, I think it is that we've needed that for a long time anyway. I think, Conte used to go on about it a lot, but I think his way of trying to take people with him was just totally wrong and wasn't, he just wasn't the right person for the club, basically. But with Ange, I think the way he brings people together and wants to get them on what he calls the journey, I think that's exactly the sort of person we need. And the way Maddison was speaking after the game about, and this Paul Milesy, he's going to have to start changing his interview technique, because I think if he carries on the way he's going, he's going to get nutted by Ange or the players or something. Because sort of Milesy is almost like that example of the old mentality that we had, where it's like, oh yeah, it was great to get a draw at Brentford, and it was like, no, we want to win. Don't take a draw as an acceptable result. And that's exactly what Maddison said. He was sort of like, we want to be winning these games, and we are going to start winning these games. So if everyone starts going into that space with that sort of mentality, then yeah, I think good things will happen. But again, I think we need to be patient. If we end up losing at Man United, at ours against Man United, I won't be all doom and gloom, because it's just this is just going to take time. So, but given what I've just seen of Man United tonight, I think we should be taking the game to them. They were not very good at all, so they're very lucky against Wolves.
But you know what? We need to take a game to everybody.
Oh yeah, 100%, and that's what Angie's going to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think that's a really good that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Steve. I think I heard you say that on the pod, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's a huge difference. If everyone throughout the organization is expecting a higher standard and a higher level of results, and not accepting that, again, Brentford away, they haven't lost a London derby in like 9 fixtures or something ridiculous. So that objectively is a good result. But anyone who watched that match clearly should be thinking, yeah, that was potentially 2 points dropped.
Yeah, 100%.
The problem that we've got, though, if you think back to last season, as painful as it was, we lost too many games to teams below us, like really below us. I'm talking like bottom half, lower bottom half. If we'd picked up points against even teams like Southampton, and those 4 or 5 more points, we would have been in Europe this year. So I think the mentality is there for when we play teams above us, maybe with the exception of Newcastle last year, that's there. It's when we, Brentford is a tricky one, isn't it? Like I said before, they are reasonably good at home, but it's the teams that sort of, the Evertons, Wolves, those sort of fixtures, Villa, maybe last season, Leeds, they've been relegated, Forest, those sort of matches are the ones that we should be expecting to completely steamroll teams over, and we don't. We struggle through those, and they're the points that if we pick those points up, the season's completely different. I think he has possibly got a bit of a free pass on Saturday, because things are still a little bit bare in terms of what's going on, but the club sold Kane, and things need to start racking up, because all of a sudden we've got Liverpool game, and then we have the international break, and all of a sudden it's great, everyone's positive at the moment, but this is a results thing. And once things aren't going well, like you said before about Richarlison doesn't start kind of picking things up, and it's going to be quite a different conversation, really. Then we get closer to the end of the transfer window, and if we haven't got rid of players, and like I said, they can't have this. We haven't had this discussion tonight, but whether the money for Kane had been spent before he left on Friday, because if it has, then the next 3 weeks is just shipping people out, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't believe that, but we'll leave that for another conversation.
Well, I mean, I our friend Dave has making a point. And I know, obviously, from our WhatsApp group, I know where Dave's coming from. And you're not wrong. We had managers who wanted to win, but you got to have managers that also work well within a club. And as much as we would like, some of us might like to see a change in who is running the football side of things at the club. That is something that we don't control. And so, unfortunately, I mean, I still will say one of Daniel's biggest mistakes. I know there's a lot to the story that I probably don't know. I know there's a lot to the story I don't know, but sacking, a cup-winning manager 5 days before a cup is one of the things I mark against Daniel Levy, because it just never made any sense to me. You stuck with it that long, and yet you finally have a chance to maybe eke something out, and then 5 days you can them. But the reality is that these managers and these players weren't working, and so now we actually, for the first time, do have a new era, starting with a manager who, again, we had. Looked at a lineup from just January of 22, I think it was.
February, I think. But
February of 22 away to Chelsea, right? And what did we find? There was only one. The entire 11 was completely changed, and only one player came into the squad that actually played, and that was because of the injury to Romero. I mean, so there's been a wholesale change in the lineup, and it's, to all's point, it's going to take a while for this group to know whether or not whether things are working. I mean, the front line definitely needs a lot of time to gel. There's no doubt about that. Missing Kane is just not going to be. We're not just going to walk past that. It's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, I think that there was a comment earlier that I wanted to put up as kind of a transition. Is Adrian says that a quality center back and competition for Emerson at right back should be our main priority. So the question I have is,
another right back. We won't.
Yeah. So I mean, I want to put this comment with this one from Andrew, which is, do we really need to bring in more attackers? Do we need to bring in more defenders? If we're only going to bring in one or two, do you want to bring it in? You want to get a Lo Celso out and bring somebody else in? Are you happy with the attacking options? Just keep everyone. Where's everyone's priorities in their mind as far as the squad is concerned? Stuart, I'll start with you.
I think the logic should be that if you're selling a striker, it doesn't matter whether it's Kane or whoever, you bring another striker in, because if you're now moving Rishi, who would have been on the bench to start, you need someone of a similar level on the bench to come in. And I think the only difference is going to be, I don't think it will necessarily be, I mean, we're hearing obviously Taremi from Porto. I think that's gone away now by the sounds of it. The bloody Gazzetta Italia are going, been having too much espresso and talking about Lukaku and all this kind of stuff. I'll be surprised if that one happens, because I don't think it makes any sense to the confidence of a player like Richarlison if you bring in a Lukaku, because Lukaku is a sort of person who won't want to sit on the bench. And then what's the point in, bringing in someone like Lukaku and then just sticking Rishi on the bench again, because Rishi would just his confidence will be dead. So I do see the sense in Orban. He's young, obviously, and he's very raw, but I think he's got the skill set and he's got the attributes to really, really work in Ange's system. And then I think after that, I think it's going to be based on who we sell, because if we sell a centre-back, we need a centre-back. And if we sell PH, we need a DM or central midfielder just to keep that level at that point, because I think Sarr is still a little bit too young to be playing lots of games. But I can see 2-3 incomings maximum. I think it will happen. I don't buy into the whole thing of we don't have any money or we've spent the Kane money and all that stuff. I think the money is there. It's just we have to sell players just purely from the size of the squad. I think it's not even about selling them. It's about we have to get them out of the squad, because we're going to have 10 odd players that we can't even put in the PL squad at the end of the window. So yeah.
On Orban, do we all know his story? It's just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
You probably do. But there's a good. If anybody hasn't watched it, there's a very good YouTube video. Just Google kind of Gift Orban, and it will come through on YouTube.
Okay.
And it's insane. He was playing basically amateur football 18 months ago. And he went. I can't remember what club it was now, but it was a 4th division Norwegian club or something. And he went for a trial and got rejected. And that was just over a year ago. And now he's potentially coming to the Premier League. It's just an insane story, and kind of there's risk in that.
Yeah, there's a lot of risk in that.
A lot of risk.
I mean, that screams risk.
It does.
It's worked all right for Højlund at Man United, because his game time in versus. I mean, I know he went to Atalanta, so he's played at a top level, but he didn't have many games before he's getting signed for 75 million by Man United. So I'd rather spend 25 million on a Royal striker than
I would buy him. I would 100% buy him. And you know what? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I think we need somebody else. And he's fast. He's 2-footed. Well, most football players are 2-footed, right? They've got 2 feet. But yeah, he can score with either feet, is what I mean. Either foot. Yeah, he's scored header goals. Yeah, so I think we need to go for him. And he looks exciting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Becky, what what's your if you're going to get to make 2 new buys, what do you see?
I'd like Eze, I have to say. I think there's been lots banded about today about midfielders and the stupid prices in midfielders and the amazing price that we got for Suma. If we can get Eze, they need to have already been sort of speaking to him, because otherwise there'll be this overinflated, horrendous price. I think I do think we need another defender if Dyer's going to go. The thing for me, and Jack sort of said this yesterday, is the kind of the lack of homegrown players. I know we've brought Maddison in now, but it'd be nice to have more sort of players that are kind of in and around the England team. I know we've done that with Phillips, haven't we? But he's very young, and it always worries me about bringing in strikers that have come from Europe, because we had this with Bergwijn. He was amazing, and then he came here and it didn't quite work. And I think if there's anything about sort of being prem proven and having a little bit of experience, that's an area I think. Otherwise, it takes them so long to get used. And the problem is we haven't got time. Like you said, I do think they have to be second in line to Richarlison. But if Richarlison gets injured or he's not quite on it, then we are a bit stuck, really. So, but in terms of who that will be, I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, I really just don't. I'm okay taking a punt on Orban. I'm not ready to buy another attacker, established attacker who's like but I still think that everything needs to be focused squarely on the back line. For me, the back line's critical, and that's really where the team is vulnerable. So we need definitely some help, and so I'd bring at least one center back in. We're not bringing a right back in, I agree. Poro's there. I just don't know if that's going to work out. We'll see. Maybe good coaching turns a player from a good athlete and into a good defender. I always think that defending is about intelligence, anticipation, and effort. It's not necessarily all about skill. So I think you could do a job given some time. So I want to end on a light note here as we wrap this thing up. I saw this come across somewhere in our chats. I wanted to show. I thought this was fantastic. I don't know if anyone else saw this. This is the new song that someone's gotten for Udogie.
We've got to get that going. We've got to get that going on Saturday.
I mean, I think you're going, Stuart, right? I heard you.
I am, yeah.
Picking up a ticket, yeah. So maybe
the problem is the Destiny one is easier to sing. The one by Lionel Richie, Yeah, you are my day. That one's easier. This one's got more words.
Okay. Anyway, and the other thing I want to shout out. So you guys are, I want to give you a quick look at the pub. This is where my son and I. This is the Tralee Irish pub that's in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I just want to point out the Australian flag hanging there. If you look to the window. We had a good crowd out for the first game, and this was us after the match. So I just want to give a shout out to the local chapter that Isaiah and I are members of, North Carolina Spurs. We had a great outing, even though it was just a draw. So with that, I want to bring the show to a close. I'd like to thank Becky very much. It was great to have you back. Looking forward to your insights from the grounds through the rest of the season. Look forward to that. Thanks for joining us so much. I appreciate it.
It's all right. Thanks. Great to be back. I'll be here
Stuart.
on Monday.
Yep. Excellent, Stuart. Thanks for jumping in tonight. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Steve, you're the man. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Can we just raise, if I can share, this point?
Oh, okay.
So we have to, it's old news. Who cares?
It is old news. It's quite important, though. I'm not going to say anything I won't say anything, but it will come out in the press, I'm sure, at some point, or somebody's book.
I would hope so.
It's not linked to what has been reported in the press so far, is all I'll say.
I look forward to Mourinho's memoir.
It's not that juicy, to be honest, but it's not what anybody else has said so far. So it'll be interesting when it comes out.
I'm looking forward to that. All right. Isaiah, thanks for joining us. I appreciate all the work you did behind the scenes and helping with the show, put together the stats information for me. I really appreciate it a lot. And I look forward to seeing everyone on a show real soon. Thank you for everyone joining us. Please, if you haven't hit that like button, please hit the like button before you exit the show. And think about our Patreon page that you see scrolling across the bottom. It's a great group, including our own prediction leagues, our own fantasy leagues, as well as our own ticket exchange and conversations that are going on 24/7 all over the world. Please join the Patreon group. It's a great organization to be a part of. All right. Thanks for everyone. And just remember, come on, you Spurs.
Go on, you
Come on, you
Spurs.
Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.